Yes, dear, we're live.
Somebody,
Hello, everybody.
Is somebody hearing music? Because I can't hear any of this.
Well, you don't have to hear any of it as well. Hi, this is Bill Paschal and my wife.
my non-technically adept, the
Wife.
beloved wife and the talent.
And welcome to Agatha Christie They Watched. This week we'll go through.
And I am concerned about the sound because we have been having issues with the sound.
Yes.
Not because of me. Because I am just the talent and I don't touch any of these settings.
Right.
But everything works, right?
Everything works. As a matter of fact, if you put put the earphones next to you over on the hook on the wall there, if you put the earphone to your ears, you can hear it'll sound terrible, right?
Can I hear you?
Can you hear me? You should be able to be hearing something.
Yes, but I'm hearing you, I guess, through the earphones, and I'm hearing you here.
Exactly.
So I hope everything is working and we don't have to do this again tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you can see right there, the device, it says microphone. So you have chosen the microphone, and we are going to be talking this time about The Big Four, based on the novel by Agatha Christie.
And we do have a copy of the. We do have a copy of it.
Copy of it.
Yeah, this is one of the gorgeous Bantam editions, and if you were ever lucky enough to walk into the secondhand bookstore or to the thrift shop and somebody has discarded Grandma's entire set, snatch it up, because they did a beautiful job, Bantam did, of republishing all of the books, all of the stories, all the short stories, everything, in these beautiful leatherette-bound editions. Leatherette, yes, it's not real leather. Many Naga hides died for this. And of course, they're just really nice reading editions. They're very, very nice. They were made to be read and they were made to look great on the shelf. But anyway, so here we are with The Big Four, which is a conspiracy novel, and it has an interesting story because this is the novel that Agatha published right after the mystery of the murder of Roger Ackroyd. And soon after she published Roger Ackroyd is when things came to a head with Archie. Her mother was dead. Remember, books take a long time between when the author writes it and then the author submits it to publisher, and then publisher has to go through edits, and publisher has to go through printing, and publisher has to do this, and publisher has to do that. And it is not unheard of for author to submit a book, a manuscript, to publisher, and then publisher doesn't get around to printing it for another year.
Now, that was not quite as bad back in her day. I think it was more like 5 or 6 months. And they did do some editing, but not nearly as much. It's amazing but then authors were very literate back then, and they were capable of writing
complete sentences and editing their own stuff. But so Agatha published The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, which we have reviewed, and the Russian one is the best by far, and then the Japanese. And her life fell apart. And, the run up to the divorce, the 11-day disappearance, the death of her mother. I mean, it was one damn thing after another, and her publisher did not care. We don't care that you have a problem. We want a manuscript. And so her brother-in-law, Campbell Christie, stepped in with an idea. Let us take this arc of 12 short stories that you published in the Sketch magazine, and they're kind of conspiracy-oriented. And I guess he read a lot of invasion novels and conspiracy thrillers like Bulldog Drummond and so forth. And he said, I think we could probably take these 12 novels and Frankenstein... torture those short stories into a novel.
But I think they were already about the Big Four. And Poirot's. Did you look at them? I can't remember.
I have never actually read them. And in fact, until a couple of years ago, they had never been republished. These short stories had never been republished. And can you reach me down the international?
Oh.
Yeah, I need international for this. And this is why you should buy a copy of International Agatha Christie She Watched, folks, because even if you don't care about watching Swedish Agatha Christie films, we have a wonderful selection in here of a chronology of all of her books and a ton of material so that you can find things.
But anyway, there were episodes. There were episodes sort of like, if you remember Tommy and Tuppence in Partners in Crime, where there was an overarch story, but each one could be read as an individual short story. So what Campbell Christie did, and with Christie's help.
Yes, here it is. In 2016, the Big Four short story collection of the original sketch short stories was republished. These are the short stories that had not been seen since 1924. They were published in 2016. And these are the stories that Campbell Christie and Archie stitched together. Yes, thank you. Jiminy Crickets. But these are the stories that they had never been seen. They had never been republished. They are not in Hercule Poirot's big case book. I have not read them, and we probably should get a copy. And in fact, we should get a copy. But they were they did kind of make an arc, but essentially they could be read as one-offs.
They needed linking material to actually kind of link it together as a novel.
And that's kind of what Campbell Christie and Agatha did, is they rewrote openings, they rewrote endings, they wrote interstitial material, and if you have the short stories, you can look at the novel and see what stitching together was done. And I have no idea, maybe Dr. Mark Aldrich does, how much Campbell Christie wrote and how much Agatha wrote.
Yeah.
No idea on my part.
Yeah, or even if they did. The point, though, is that these were stitched together, and the stories, well, it's considered one of her worst novels. And certainly Agatha would agree. It was something she had to do on deadline, and it was done and off her table. And then after that, she worked on The Mystery of the Blue Train.
Which she was not happy with, but many of us really like.
But at the same time, she said this experience taught her that she was a professional novelist. She wasn't a housewife who wrote
when the muse struck.
Well, she never wrote. The muse always struck with her. And that's one of the surprises. You go look at something like the collection of her publications in Agatha Christie she watched in International. Before this, she was writing 12, 14 short stories and a novel a year.
It is really striking. I did not realize until I set out to do the chronology for International Agatha Christie, I did not realize how much she wrote every year. And, you know, in a way, you can kind of see why Archie Christie was kind of miffed, because he wanted a wife and not an author who spent all of her time with her head in her manuscript. And she wrote a lot. It is really startling how much she wrote.
Yeah.
But anyway, so she had this material, and Campbell was right there, and they were both well enough read to know that the English simply adore big conspiracy thrillers. And she had already written something like this, because, of course, The Secret Adversary is a conspiracy thriller, even though it is really a romantic thriller. And the almost there.
But they had invasion novels before World War I.
The Man in the Brown Suit. The Man in the Brown Suit is also, you know, you have this worldwide conspiracy, but overseen by this genius brain. And she was very familiar with the format. She made fun of it.
Mm-hmm.
And later on, I think after she recovered from, as she was recovering from the stress of 1926 and 1927 and 1928, in 1929, she wrote The Seven Dials, which is, of course, a parody of these novels. So here we are with the Big Four, and I was really dreading the movie. We saw it, of course, as part of the Agatha Project, and it came up in the rotation as we're working our way through all the David Suchet films, and I was really dreading it because the novel is so not real. It's pretty bad.
What did Mark Gatiss and his husband do? Because it's a dual credits, one of the few credits Ian Hallard receives, and so he co-wrote the script with Mark Gatiss.
I bet you. Well, I don't know if Mark Gatiss writes plays chess, but I bet you one of them said something about this. You know, maybe that's Ian Howland's contribution. Who knows? But Mark Gatiss took the Big Four. He took the idea of invasion novels. He took Bulldog Drummond, who was this like Mike Hammer, Mickey Spillane figure, you know, two-fisted Englishman, you know, fighting his way across the world for God and the Crown, and all of this fears, and the fact that so much of it was not real, and that's what he did. He turned it into this wonderful mashup, and like The Seven Dials, everything you think you know as you're working your way through this with Poirot and the gang is not real.
Well, and
But
should say it's
it is
probably
because
it's too late
it's
to say,
pretty
but
real
this
to the people who died.
we have spoilers here. But what ends up happening is that we can go through and actually start talking about, because what it opens with is Poirot's funeral. We have the death of Hercule Poirot. We have the gang has come back together. This is like what year was this? 2013.
Yes, and they hadn't done a group like this in several years. Everybody is noticeably older, and in fact, poor Hastings and Georges the valet and Miss Lemon, very sad about Miss Lemon, really aren't given very much to do. And I will say now that I have always thought that the whoever it is that produced the Poirot series, and I've forgotten who they are, they should have done a TV series with Miss Lemon running her secretarial bureau by day and her detective agency by night, because she would have been perfect. Absolutely perfect. But now the interesting question, because of course the film elides past all kinds of things, how much did Japp know? And Japp had to have known.
Well, if possibly, because let's face it, we know Poirot doesn't die. So they start with the funeral and set it
in
up.
fact, if I remember correctly, this comes out of the novel, because Poirot pretends to be dead, and then his twin brother, Hercule Poirot, investigates.
Right, but we don't have an Hercule in this. But anyway, now I've lost my thought.
We're losing trains of thoughts all over the place, which is what happens in the novel, but Mark Gatiss tied everything up very nicely.
But after the funeral, we jump a few weeks back to where we have
4 weeks.
Yeah, 4 weeks before, but where we have this reporter who's trying to whoops, that's Aber Island. We want our reporter Tyso, who is trying to convince the Foreign Office that there's a conspiracy by the Big Four, and he's holding a book by Li Changyan. So he's one of the 4 members of the Big Four. He is a Chinaman, and we're going to use that word because that's what they say.
Yes, the struggle for peace.
Yeah.
Li Changyan.
He's a member of the Peace Party in Britain, one of 4 people involved in trying, and this was a very big thing before the run-up to World War II. There was desperate measures to essentially outlaw war, and there was an actual
after
pact.
World War I, there was so much the meat grinder that World War I was, the gas chamber, and people absolutely would have done anything to avoid going through that again. And well, and maybe they held it off a few years.
They founded the League of Nations, but it was relatively kind of toothless. There was always this struggle about what kind of power you give an international organization.
And you're always faced with some leadership of some country saying, I'm going to do X, and then the answer, and what are you going to do about it?
Which is the essence of diplomacy. Somebody does something, no matter what.
What are you going to do?
We're not a political channel, so we're not getting into that.
Oh, God, no.
Except in the most general way, because diplomacy is a matter of something happens, and
what are you going to do about it?
And that's the essence of diplomacy and essentially warfare. But there was a peace party here. There was the American
soap millionaire with the shady past. That's Aber Island. You have the Madame Oliver. She is the brilliant French scientist. The murderous chess problem, lovely scene, and you can tell how absurd it all is, that you're having this chess match between Aber Island, the soap billionaire, and the Russian grandmaster lured out of retirement, and they're playing chess, which is of course a warfare game. They're playing a war game, and it's going to somehow bring this entire mob of incredibly well-dressed elite people together to support the cause of peace. And you think, well, okay, maybe.
It's a good stunt, and that's what it is. It's an America versus Russia. Only Abe, of course, it's a Russian grandmaster lured out of retirement for a lot of money. He's a good capitalist, and Aber Island, of course, is a kind of an amateurish player. So
and that's probably, well, at the time, my dad used to play chess all the time. My dad was a very serious chess player, and so when we watched this episode, I knew exactly how riveting a chess game can be for chess players and how non-riveting it can be for non-chess players who all flee the room instantly.
yes, and they're all standing around the table,
watching the table as they do the Ruy Lopez. And I am pronouncing it the way my dad pronounced it, so sue me. But this is the Ruy Lopez opening, and is a very common, very traditional opening. And in that time period, in the 1930s, and the Poirot series is kind of set in 1935, 1936. Huge numbers of people. They all played the Ruy Lopez. And it's a standard set of openings. And then by the time you get to, say, move 15 or 16, that's when you start seeing the variations. And that's where you prove that you can do more than just move the pieces around on the board, which is how most people play chess.
Right.
They really don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing, but I do know how to move the pieces around on the board.
But this is the third. By the third move, the chess grandmaster falls over dead.
And the thing is, if you are known for playing the Ruy Lopez as your opening every single time you sit down at a board, anybody who wants to electrify the chessboard from underneath already knows exactly where each piece is going to go, because you have to put the white bishop on row 5. I wrote it down in here. Where is it? Yes, column B, row 5. You have to put your bishop on column B, row 5, on the white bishop. That's how the Ruy Lopez works. And so for you non-chess players, that's why this works.
Yeah, because
you are not just moving pieces around at random.
Right, because the chessboard, that one particular, I can't point to it with the mirror, but that particular square was electrified, so that, and the bishop had a little bit of extra weight under, had a metal plate, so
a slim wire running up through it, and of course, from the looks of them, they're
traditional pieces. They're not.
Well, they're not totally traditional. They're elaborated on the.
It's not the Staunton
set, my dad. Yeah, thank you. The Staunton.
The Staunton is the standard set.
Yeah.
So this was more elaborate, and then Poirot had to learn how to do it, and
of course he's playing with this ultra modern set, which is really not very good. It's stylish. It's stylish. It's not the Staunton set. It's not the Staunton set, and that's a bishop in his hand. You can tell by the by the mitered cap. That's how you know it's a bishop.
But you have to give the prop master props that was an amazing find. I love that chess.
God only knows where they found that.
Wouldn't play it at all, but I admire. It's perfectly in keeping with Poirot's aesthetic. Very modernist, very clean lines, very even. It's not. Obviously not balanced. You would have looked at the queen and king on next to each other and shudder because it's not symmetrical.
And they have to be that way, because how else do you tell the queen from the king? Because the queen can range all over the board, and the king.
Yeah. So he's investigating.
Kings don't run around.
So we have a series of murders going on. We have a Chinese expert who's found beaten to death in his home. There's a plot to implicate the butler in that.
Yes, who was just out of prison, and he has a prison record, and he has this ridiculous cock and bull story that, I got out of Wandsworth a couple of months ago, and this pastor was waiting for me, and he gave me a job with the China expert, Mr. Wally. And I guess Mr. Wally accepted what he was told, and this guy was working hard, so everything worked. And you think, well, that couldn't possibly be true, but Poirot realizes that things are not the story that he's being told doesn't really fit the facts. And of course, one of the facts is that there's that big frozen lump of mutton on the table, and it is still frozen solid. And if the mutton, and this isn't spelled out very well, but I think it's better done in the novel, which is that. And I guess everybody in England at the time would have known that butchers generally don't deliver on Monday, because you're still eating your leftover Sunday roast, but they will deliver on Tuesday.
Yeah, but it's also the fact that that mutton was frozen, which means somebody came to the house, and the police was telling him nobody came to the house. The neighbors are curtain twitchers.
And remember, and we are told all the neighbors are curtain twitchers. But also remember, this is 1935, 1936. Nobody has a big deep freeze. The butcher may, as part of his shop. But individual families, individual households, you didn't have a freezer. At best, you had a little tiny space over your refrigerator, cooled by the ice from above, and you had a couple of ice cubes.
Called
and
an ice box.
Yes, called an ice box, and you had, you had a tray of ice cubes, and you might have been making coffee Marlowe in your ice box for dessert, which is a traditional dessert of the time, which I have made, and it is marshmallows, and it is strong black coffee, and then you mix it in with great quantities of whipped cream. The marshmallows provide the sweetening and the force everything together, and you need an ice box or a freezer to make one of these. But that's all you had. You had a space the size of, not much bigger than a shoebox.
Yeah, and we have a scene in which Poirot is actually kind of looking in the cupboard and checking the milk, and the milk wasn't even. I mean, it sounds like you had to drink them. It was in the larder, a cool space, but that was it.
That was it.
And so he figures out, and this is another Christie trope, and this is what I talk about in my upcoming book, Kill Like Christie. Nobody notices a servant.
Yes, you don't notice what you expect to see on a routine basis. And so you don't notice the mailman walking around. You don't notice the gas man reading meters. You don't notice the power company guy walking around reading meters. You don't see them. They blend into the background. It's only if you stop them and say, hey, that telephone pole over there is leaning, that you actually come into contact with them. They're ignored.
Yeah. And especially servants. In a lot of stories by Agatha Christie, servants are not recognized. They're not remembered. They're just part of the background. And she extended it, or Mark Gatiss extended it here, with the guy who delivers the meat. And that means somebody was in the house that day, in addition to the maid and the butler.
That's right. There was someone else there, and Poirot realizes that immediately, and he noticed, and during his Poirot at the end, he mentions that early on he started to think how theatrical all of this is, and how absurd, how over the top. I mean, remember, Poirot is an experienced detective, and he hobnobs with the greats, and he knows perfectly well how smart those people are in government, or how not smart they are, and how hard it is to get a group of super geniuses together and have them cooperate instead of killing each other. And so, again, Mark Gatiss does this wonderful job where early on you have Tyso, again, who is the gullible newspaper guy, and he is talking to Mr. Ingalls, who is some kind of a member of the Foreign Service, and Tyso, the reporter, says, I have proof. I keep getting all of these anonymous letters about the Big Four. And Mr. Ingalls is like, what?
And he actually says, this sounds like a Bulldog Drummond plot.
Yes, exactly, because this is a Bulldog Drummond plot. And for those of you who do not know him, and I think we mentioned this briefly, the whole series of, Sapper wrote dozens of these books, and then he had a friend who wrote more, and they're probably still you can probably find them in any used bookstore in
probably
the
on
UK.
Project Gutenberg by now. Some of them are in the public domain,
and it's just so ridiculously over the top. You have the secret lair, and they're going to take over the world, and you're going to end up with this one world government, and like, why would you want the hassle? And how are you going to get all of those people who live in tiny little villages 10,000 miles from where you are? How are you going to get them to kowtow to you?
Yeah.
And it was just it's just Ingalls tells, my gosh, a comment, thank you. That means we can be heard. But Ingalls tells Tyso that this is absurd. You are being fed a cock and bull story, and I have no idea why you are listening to it, and I'm not going to listen to it.
Yep.
And yes, class structure and the lack of humanity given to people who serve is prevalent in English fiction, but you know what? It is even more prevalent in every single aristocratic society. And you read your Russian novels set in the time of the czars, and servants and serfs basically don't exist. German peasants don't exist. Chinese peasants don't exist. If you are down there at the bottom of the food chain, you don't exist.
Yeah. So we have Tyso. He approaches Poirot. He actually makes a scene at the chess match, and he meets Poirot. And well, let's leave that alone, dear.
Oh, I should leave that alone?
Well, because
I'm
we're
I'm
broadcasting.
I'm
Don't
broadcasting.
yeah,
Okay,
let's
okay.
try not to use. I mean, I appreciate the thought, of doing something and saying cool, and then there you go. How's that? But we are
We
trying to do two things at the same time. But Tyso
that not
is,
very well either.
but Tyso is, he's talking to Poirot. He's trying to get an agreement with Poirot. He wants to be in on the investigation, and Poirot says no, and Tyson says, "Well, I'm going to play a lone hand."
And
But he is the driving force because he's writing all these stories that are
for the
in
Daily
for the
Comet.
Daily Comet, clearly a tabloid, by the way, because tabloids in Britain have a certain reputation.
And you look at that tabloid, go back to that picture, look at that tabloid. And for those of you who are familiar with the New York Post or other tabloids, they have to have that newspaper out every day, and they have to sell that newspaper, and they need to have big grabby pictures. Look at that Russian maestro dies at gala chess game. They are still beating that story. This is like the next day, or this is the first day, or they repeat the same story over and over with new details because they've got to have something new every single day, and they have to have a huge headline that will draw people in. And this is how tabloids do it. And the reporters who report for tabloids, they don't have the time to investigate carefully, and nor do they have the uh, um, nor do they have, let's
Brains,
say, the
intelligence.
inclination to investigate. Because if they really were interested in things that actually affect daily life, they would be down there at the city council meeting scribbling down notes while the city councilors argue about parking minimums. But you don't see that. I mean, let's face it, school board meetings are boring.
Well, but
But
tabloids
this
rely on sales.
tabloids rely
More
on
sales,
yes.
more profits. So therefore, that's how a product is bent to
And
meet its customers.
later on, when we meet our villain, he's delighted with how gullible and easy to manipulate Tyso was. All he had to do was send these anonymous letters, and Tyso was like, ah, hair on fire. Oh my God, train crash in India. It must be the big four.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, a bus plunge in South America. It had to have been the big four. The one thing after another. This is our heroine. This is Flossie. She is an aging actress, which is why she used to play Juliet. Now she plays the nurse.
And this is not, they don't quite say this, but it's one of those things you have to know because, of course, that's a wimple that the nurse wears in Romeo and Juliet. And you can tell she's older, and Juliet, of course, is young and fresh, and they talk about this sort of thing as well. So Flossie has been a long-time actress.
And yet this is the events in the Big Four and remember, it's about 1936. They refer back to an incident that happened, because old sins have long shadows, an incident that happened in 1924, only 12 years prior.
Yeah. And part of this, it happens where Poirot's investigating the death of the Chinese expert in his home, the one we told you about with the butler being suspected. And there's a nephew who is the only close relative who hasn't showed up yet.
And this by itself is suspicious. This is very suspicious, because if the relative is not showing up to inherit that great big house and all of that lovely lovely knickknacks that could be sold for a pretty penny, why isn't he? He's either dead or he's doing something else more important, because, there's this big pile of money waiting for him.
Yeah, and Poirot is told that he left some trunks behind, and he goes up into the attic and investigates the trunks, and he discovers all kinds of things, all things theatrical related in the scrapbook, including a picture, and he's actually working it out how many people show up repeatedly, and Flossie's the only one who shows up repeatedly. And there's even this lovely little toy theater, and you could see how they worked the theme of the four. There's all kinds of fours all over the place, including, there's clocks, there's references to four everywhere. Flossie gets a message with 4 kisses on it, and you have here the same 4 essentially that show up in the clues that are getting sent to Tyso as well.
Yes, the Chinaman death the femme fatale, and the American. In this
Mm-hmm.
case, a cowboy, because by God, you can't be more American than with a cowboy.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
there
those
they
are the
are on the
four
cards.
clues as
Yes, and
well.
again, you get the Chinaman, you get the
Wealthy
rich,
man.
the wealthy man, you get the femme fatale, and you get death.
The French femme fatale, because they make a point of saying, why does it say D? And Poirot says dame, a French word. You know, that's the queen. And of course, the card of death, and nobody knows who number 4 is. And that's another thing that shows up repeatedly, a lot of conspiracy fiction, but also she uses it in the Tommy and Tuppence, number 13. Who is number 13?
Oh
Who's the
yes.
leader in the brown suit? In
Yeah,
the brown suit?
who is this hidden person working from behind the scenes to pull strings?
Yep.
And one of the one of the things I really like about Agatha, and certainly Seven Dials, the novel, should show you this, is you go along, you read everything, and you think you're working it out, and then she pulls the rug out from underneath you, and then you have to go back and reread the novel and realize, wow, she really fooled me. And with the Big Four, which I did plow through some years back when we were doing this project, well, the individual short stories, I'm sure, are much better.
Yeah.
But it is a constant trope with her. And I have to say again how impressed I am with the wonderful job Mark Gatiss did taking that mess and turning it into a tight, fast-moving, often funny story.
Mm-hmm.
It everything worked together, and it played off all of the fears and all of the tropes that, oh my God, there's this huge conspiracy that they're going to take over the world and we're all going to become slaves, and as Ingalls tells Tyso, no, it doesn't work like that. They're not
Mm-hmm.
that smart.
Yeah.
He doesn't say that phrase, they're not that smart, but it's fairly obvious, and it's also fairly obvious that he thinks that Tyso is wearing his tinfoil hat too tightly.
Yeah, so you have other murders, including there's Stephen Painter, who is drugged and laid against a heating grate, like that. Horrible, one of the
way.
more horrible
basically
ways to
they
go.
cook him.
They cook him alive.
They cook his brain. He is cooked alive. That is just so awful.
Because he's paralyzed.
There is the homeless bum who was probably paid to put on the nice tux and then knifed.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just a victim. The whole point of the exercise is that he is a victim. You have Jonathan Wally, the Chinese expert, who is bashed in the head with a frozen leg of mutton, and then has his throat cut.
Oh yeah, that's them at the scene, and you can see again the set dressing is perfect.
Oh my gosh. And again, you look at that and wonder, where is the nephew and heir, because you're seeing a lot of money wrapped around that place. And in fact, they even bring that out with these very valuable figurines that supposedly the manservant has stolen.
Mm-hmm.
But he hasn't. He doesn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
And Poirot goes through, because conveniently our villain has left behind all those scrapbooks, and so he actually does the detective work. And again, this is kind of a rarity. This is kind of a rarity with a lot of murder mysteries. You're seeing detective work going on, and he makes lists of names, of all of the names that show up over and over, and he talks to many, many people to find out if they are connected, how they are connected. And with Flossie, he strikes gold.
Yeah. And in fact, there's a scene in which I kind of wonder did this happen before or after Sherlock? Because there's a scene in which he's thinking, and this is and they're showing various clues, like he's in his mind palace. Like on the Sherlock series.
I have no idea. I have no idea. But he's recognizing, and in fact, we saw this. This is. Are you seeing what you're seeing? So when Poirot sees the body on the slab, this is the man who was knifed right in front of Tyso. This is the man who was knifed right in front of Tyso, the gullible reporter. He is unshaved. He is not in great shape, but he's wearing this very nice but very old-fashioned tuxedo, an extremely well-made garment.
30 years out of date,
30
I
years,
think.
yeah, Poirot says 30 years out of date, but a very, very nice tuxedo, because you can wear good formal wear for decades. but it is subtly out of date. You can recognize that, but there's no labeling on it anywhere, and you would normally get a tailor's label, except that they find this. And this is damaged, and it was tucked in an inside pocket. They didn't get all of the labeling. But Poirot looks at the body on the slab, and they actually pan down so you can see the body's feet. And this is not a man who bathes regularly. Even from the slight distance on the TV scene, you look at those gnarly toenails and those dirty feet, and this is a man who lives hard. But what is he doing in formal wear? And that's a good question, and that's the question that Poirot asks. He doesn't take it at face value that this is some respectable man. And of course, you don't see the police work grinding on in the background where they're trying to figure out who is this guy on the slab, because generally people who can afford nice formal wear have backgrounds, they have histories, they have identities. You can find them. They have relatives who call the police and say, my husband didn't come home from the theater last night. And
well, but this is also a, you would call it a callback. Maybe she was inspired by it, but Whose Body by Dorothy Sayers, published years before, about 7 years before, has the exact same clue. There's a naked body in the bath, and he's supposed to be this financier, but his teeth are in terrible condition. Kind of looks like him, but his teeth are in terrible condition. He obviously looks like a someone who's not who you think it is.
And there's another clue, but we won't spoil it for you.
Yeah, we have it in the book. So if you feel like looking it up, I mean, we do have the annotated collection of Agatha Christie, but we also have 2 books in the Dorothy Sayers collection, the first 2 novels. We just published Clouds of Witness, thank God. That's a long story behind that. But anyway, Poirot's getting close, and that's when we come to the point of his death. Where he's been called to this place in the basement.
And we're taking a big risk doing this because YouTube will get snotty with us.
Well, this is only going to be for so much, but I wanted to show you have to see this in motion just to see, because
Beautiful
obviously
explosion.
They did not blow up a room in the square in the heart of London. So
no, they most certainly
effects.
did not. And it's interesting again because you have there's when Poirot is doing the summing up at the end, he says, you know, how he managed to escape the bombing.
Mm-hmm.
And he suddenly, you see him stop, and David Suchet does such a good job. You see him stop and look around and look, and you can see him thinking, 4, 4, 4, 4.
There's
it's
all
almost
kinds
4
of fours
o'clock.
he's surrounded by.
He's surrounded by 4s. The number 4. It's almost 4 o'clock. I need to get the hell out of here. And he throws his cane. It's like he almost suspects, okay, bomb. He throws his cane in because he can always come back and get it later if he's wrong. But he throws the cane into the room, and this is his chance to disappear. And then in the sum up, you see that he has disappeared. But they really did a really good job.
Yeah. It finally leads to a showdown at the theater with Flossie tied to a chair in the theater.
Very brave. The role of a lifetime.
The role of a lifetime. And they actually say, Poirot warns her about that she's in danger. And this whole story comes out about how our villain was in love with her when they were in repertory in 1924.
And she was rudely dismissive of this short guy.
I want a man who does something. I want a man who will be remembered.
Well, he made himself remembered. And it's that, like we said, it's that great, great trope. Nobody sees the average guy. And if you have a very average look, but not an average mind, you can really use that to your advantage because nobody will pay attention.
And I must admit, the acting throughout was magnificent.
Wonderful show.
The way they were able to convey the minute emotions. And I had to learn a lot about this because in doing Agatha Christie she watched, I would take a scene in order to do mugs, and let's do it the right way because you see I have 6
here's
mugs,
the mugs. Wait,
6 mugs per story. So I would take a bit of footage and break it down into individual pictures. So I'm actually flickering through, and there are some people, they're stone face. You could pick any one in that sequence of 100 images.
Boy, that's for sure.
It would look the same. And then there are some, it's a little flicker, it's a little nod, it's a a questioning glance. Some of these people do a really good job, and I have to
And
give the guy who did Dr. Quentin, Simon Lowe. He had You wonder, actors have to do certain things, and they say, "We want you to be a nobody." And actors don't want to be a nobody,
that's
but
why they're actors.
that's why they're actors. And
But
he even criticizes Poirot at the end, because Poirot's on the stage and he's being as Poirot as possible and dramatic as possible, and the guy is calling him out on this.
oh yes, and there's another character in there. A lot of characters are only on screen for a few minutes, and yet they become very memorable. And that is Stephen and Diana Painter's nephew. You took a picture of him
Yep,
because he is again the perfect parody of a
oh,
Woodhouse Drones Club member.
he's the
He,
black sheep of the family and admits it,
and happily drunk, and
and
he's over
charming
there
his
the
way.
next morning. He's there the next morning after Stephen Painter gets grilled alive, and he's offering
He's playing
Poirot
pool,
a drink,
a
and
drink at daytime.
no, not just daytime, fairly in the morning. It's probably like 11 o'clock in the morning.
And he had some sort of joke, something about it'll be the death of me, and he actually pauses and says, "Ooh, bad timing." Sorry about that.
But this is one of the I think one of the best of the David Suchet Poirot episodes, and there's some really good
Okay.
ones in there,
Well,
but this is one of the best.
that brings us to the point where we ask you, how did you rate it for fidelity to text?
Fidelity to text, it is one bishop uh, for out of a potential of 5 separate methods of death. But because really Mark Gatiss took the basic idea and threw everything else away. But the quality of movie on its own is 4.5 mayhem, 4.5 different kinds of mayhem. A bishop, a kosh, a knife, an electric heater, and a bomb. So it's 4.5 of them. But for fidelity to text, no, it's not faithful to the novel hardly at all. But it doesn't matter because it works. And movies are not books, and they are different things.
Yeah.
And so,
but in the end, what's really fascinating again about this is how the solution hinges on understanding that to the characters involved, this is real life. We can look at this and look at the big four and look at the conspiracy theories and all that and buy into it. But even the characters in the fiction says this is a fictional construct. So in a way, this is one of those classic misdirections of this is how they get us.
the other thing that I would say, boy, I am having trouble today. I can tell that, my brains are turning into tapioca. Is Mark Gatiss is saying, think, pay attention. What do you really see versus what you think you see? And I think there's that famous Sherlock Holmes to Watson, you see, but you do not observe.
Mm-hmm.
And Tyso, the reporter, sees, but he does not observe. He does not think. How much faith can I actually put in these anonymous notes? All of these characters, they see what's happening around them, but they don't take the step of standing back and thinking and saying, what is actually happening? And this is one of the great tropes of Agatha Christie. There's a number of novels, a number of short stories where Miss Marple or Poirot says, when we strip everything else away, this is what actually happened. This person died. Now, this one's considerably more complicated because it's a more complicated book, and it's more than just this person died. But at the end, somebody had to die. Why did they die? And who was the person who was there? And I think that I'm sorry, Dimitri is distracting me. He's bouncing up and down on the other side of the room.
Our cat.
One of our cats. And maybe someday they will make an appearance, but probably not. You'll never see them. But what I like about one of the things I really like about this film is that it asks you to step back and say, wait a minute, what is really happening? Is there another explanation before I start running around with my hair on fire? And you hope that Tyso, boy reporter, will learn something from this experience. I mean, it's obvious that Flossie did. Flossie, the actress, because when she goes off with Tyso to be interviewed, he says, remember, she spurned our hero and told him what a short nebbishy idiot he is who will never do anything. And now she's with this reporter, and it's been 12 years, and he will make her famous again, and he will make sure that she gets roles to play. And she says, "Oh, of course, I would love to go out to dinner with you.
Well, then,
Oh, I would love to go dancing
yes,
with
let's
you."
go to Simpsons. She says Simpsons, which is an actual restaurant in London, Simpsons on the Strand, noted for its old English cuisine, including rare roast beef on Sundays, Sunday dinners. One of those things you pick up when you start annotating these books. I get a better understanding of English life, and I would have loved to go on to Simpsons.
But it is clear that Flossie has learned from the experience, which is she is never going to be rude and dismissive like that again. Not when it leads to this loon essentially remaking the world in his favor so that he can kill people to get her attention.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
So it's a great episode.
It's like I can't think of what his name is. Hinckley shooting President Reagan
God,
for the benefit of so Jodie Foster, the actress, would pay attention to him. And my God, I just now thought of that. Oh my God!
So
there
yes,
it is.
There are real life analogs. Maybe
there it is.
So, what are we going to be talking about next week?
Next week, we are moving on to the next novel that Agatha published, the one that she did not like herself, but many of us do, and it is The Mystery of the Blue Train. And this is a reworking of the Plymouth Express, kind of expanded, the short story, The Plymouth Express, and
considered this is a precursor to Orient Express in a way.
It kind
it's
of
like
in
a dress
a way,
rehearsal for what became Orient
kind
Express.
of in a way, and it is a very fun movie. It's another one. It is sparkling, and it's
an Agatha Christie Poirot episode.
And the novel really can be. The novel is overly complicated. There are things that she does. It's like you can tell that she's padding out the story because she's got to get this thing written. But there are sections of it that are just absolutely delightful, and they show up on the film. Lady Lennox with husband number 4, who is her favorite husband, and it's a fun movie. It is really fun. If you can make somebody having their face bashed in on a train funny and lighthearted and charming and sparkling, The Mystery of the Blue Train does it.
And this also stars Elliot Gould, by the way, if you know your 70s movies, MASH and The Long Goodbye, I think it is, one of the Robert Altman takes on the mystery genre.
I know his name, but I don't think I've ever actually seen Elliot Gould in a movie, and if I had, I don't remember.
Right, but he's in there
so he
as
didn't
well.
Make an impression on me.
He was a Poirot fan. He actually contacted them and said, "Hey, I'm Elliot Gould. Can I be in your TV show?" And they went, "Oh yeah,
you bet.
let's do it." And he has a really good meaty role in this, so it's good. It's good. It's a lot of fun. Even if you don't watch us next Thursday, go see it. It's a fun movie.
It is a very, very fun movie. And again, it turns on the idea that pay attention to what is actually happening as to what you think happened.
That's right. Because actually, we act like we love each other, but do we really?
Bill?
Anyway,
after
take
what
care.
you told me this morning.
See you next week. And thank you very much.
Thanks.
This is Agatha Christie. They watched.
And I'm Teresa Peschel.
And I'm Bill Peschel.
And thanks for joining us.